Tony's president of Clayton Agri-Marketing Incorporated, and has been involved in the international marketing of animal genetics and agricultural products for over 30 years in many different capacities, both in the private and government sector. Clayton Agri-Marketing is one of the largest export companies in the United States that deal in the live animal trade. Tony has exported beef cattle, dairy cattle, goats, horses, sheep, swine, and agricultural equipment to 65 different countries, which, having been sort of looking at a couple of opportunities, that's no small feat, right? That's just doing it once is a big hurdle. So Tony's got lots of experience in this space. Before starting his own company in 1996, Tony was employed by an Illinois-based livestock export firm as director of market development from 1992 to 1996. Tony was also employed by the Missouri Department of Agriculture from 85 to 92 as coordinator of their international marketing program. Tony is responsible for the promotion of Missouri's livestock genetic industry to potential buyers around the world. Tony's a graduate of the University of Central Missouri in Warrensburg and has a BS degree in agricultural education. He's also a graduate of State Fair Community College in Sedalia, Missouri, where he obtained an associate's degree in agribusiness. Tony's a 2013 recipient of the Small Business Administration Exporter of the Year Award from Missouri in Region 7. And in 2002, Clayton Agri-Marketing received the Agricultural Exporter of the Year Award from the state of Missouri. Tony's past president of U.S. Livestock Genetics Exporters Association and past chairman of the U.S. LGE. He's currently serving in his third term on the United States Department of Agriculture and U.S. Trade Representative Agricultural Technical Advisory Committee for the development of export trade on animals and animal products. I've had a preview of Tony's slides. It's going to be a really interesting talk. We're glad that Tony's joined us. He lives in Jefferson, Missouri with his wife, Evan. They have 3 children and 3 grandchildren. Tony, thanks so much for joining us today. Please help us welcome Tony Clayton.
Bob, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you here today and talk about a few things in the export world that does affect each and every one of you, whether you participate in it or not. So I'm going to spin the globe and we're going to talk about lots of different issues. I know in the program, it said I'm supposed to talk about where they're going, where we're going to sell them to. I'm going to vary from that just a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about where they're going to go and maybe some of the challenges for us to get them there in years to come. I'm a big fan of Will Rogers. He said all he knew is what he read in the newspapers. Well, all I know is from 30 years of traveling. Prior to COVID, I took an international trip about every 7 weeks. I probably came the longest distance to get here. I came back from Bangladesh over the weekend, so I've got my miles in to come and talk. And as Bob told you in the introduction, we've exported cattle, hogs, horses, sheep, and goats to 65 different countries. We do the work for Anheuser-Busch. We move the Clydesdales around the world and bring them back in the U.S., so we have some experience moving animals. The world is a small place. Much changed from when we started. When we communicated by fax and by telexes, now the click of a mouse, you can research any product that you want. YouTube can tell you how to fix anything that you want, and you can research breeders, genetics, social media. You can make contact with anyone around the world and develop your business. So we are connected to many places, just a click of a mouse. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about what's driving the export market. Well, population, urbanization, and expanding economies, something we have in common with many, many countries around the world. What's going to drive our market is population. It is predicted by 2050 that we're going to have about 9.5 billion people on this planet. Me being from Southwest Missouri, that's a big number. To break that down from 100 million, well, that comes to 8.3 million a month, 277,000 people a day, about 192 people a minute, 3 people per second. So these are the people that we're going to have to feed in the years to come. And I am a firm believer that hungry people are dangerous people. So we're going to do our part as far as agriculture to help feed this world and hopefully try to keep the peace in places that we can. Changes from when I was born in 1960 to where we're at, and look at the changes of the customers that we're going to be servicing around the world. You know, you look at 2021, the top populations, China, India, USA. You look at Indonesia, Pakistan. Believe it or not, the best or the country that imports most of the U.S. cattle for the last 3 years is Pakistan. It's followed by Vietnam. So we've seen changes in our clients around the world, and the people that we're going to have to service, again, it's going to be people that drive the demand for what we do here in all different agricultural products. So what happens? You make more money? Same here. You buy a better TV, you buy a better car, and you eat better. It's about meat and it's about milk. And then when you start to throw in different situations around the world, as example, this Russia-Ukraine situation, and you start to take wheat out of the market, and there goes bread, and then you've got rice. So we're going to come into some things this year that this world has not seen for a while. So there's going to be some challenges with food. But again, the demand is protein, meat, and milk. So by the demand of meat and milk, it has opened the market for a lot of the genetics that we produce here in the United States, whether it's beef cattle, dairy cattle, swine, goats, sheep, and the pleasure horses, and the people demand to come in the equine industry to come to the U.S. to buy their genetics. Animal trade is a $1 billion business. We contribute the overall economy of all agricultural goods exported in the U.S. The blue line represents where we're at. Our trend of the products that we export. Red represents the amount of agricultural products that we import. So we try to keep the blue line above the red line. That'll give you some idea of what we contribute to. U.S. genetics are a value-added commodity that we have. You've spent years performance testing, developing EPDs, developing genomics. People around the world want to come in. They look at the U.S. of being a leader of all species. Now, we have some misconceptions that a lot of the international clientele around the world think that all of our animals are registered. All animals are bred with sex semen. So we had a lot of time to explain to them that it's not. So, and the power of the pedigree is what drives the interest in U.S. demand. And I couldn't put them all up here, but when you get into whether it's Angus or Charolais or Hereford, they all have in common. And explaining your genetics to these people around the world that we're going to work with, and I'm going to circle back to this slide. You look out in 2050, the countries that we're going to be exporting to help feed their population. A lot of them are third world countries. I write a term paper every day to a client around the world trying to explain EPDs, genomics, and they've gone into websites of breed associations or maybe your farm or ranch website, and they're rating it and they think they can get it all in one generation. So I explained to a lot of our clients that buying genetics, high genomics, EPDs, what have you, it's like buying a car. You want the sunroof? It costs money. You want the aluminum wheels? It costs money. So we have a lot of misinformation out there. We work with clients around the world that are not educated to our genetic systems. So if you're here on behalf of a breed association, there's a lot of ways that you can join through United States Livestock Export Genetics, some other organizations that you can travel around the world and put on seminars. That's what we did in Bangladesh for the last 9 days of meeting with the Ministry of Agriculture there. And they only recognize really 2 breeds of cattle, Holstein and their local breed. But they have opportunity for Brahman, Brangus, Beefmaster. So go and try to get these countries to recognize other breeds of cattle that could be exported from the United States into their markets. So we have this problem around the world with different countries. They're only recognize certain breeds, and we have a lot to offer of different breeds that we raise here. The challenges, I'm going to touch on this, and Lord knows in this day and world, we have a lot of challenges to keep our markets open and things that affect our export business. Used to be 1 or 2 of these topics would be in play, whether it's the economy, a strong dollar, oil prices. Well, today you can pretty well bet 5 out of 6 of these are in play. Oil this morning at $125 a barrel. Animal disease that even here in the U.S. with avian influenza affects what we do. All of these things touch us. You know, from my career, I lived through a Mexican peso devaluation in the 90s, a downturn in the Asian market in 1998, PED outbreak in China, H1N1. All of these things have come into play that affect the export business. And now we're having to manage all of these things in an export shipment. The export chain, because of the world situation, affects everything that we kind of do here in the process. We have our livestock selection, we have our blood testing, our APHIS, Animal Plant Health Inspection Service from USDA, the way we move animals from point A to point B to get them to a port of embarkation, our inspection, and the actual export. So I'm going to just touch on some of these. More than ever, as far as making an export shipment now, you have to plan the trade and trade the plan. That's the adage we have in our office, because things are going to change every day. Just because it's a moving target of all those things I've talked about before. The selection process. We've seen, because of COVID, has really limited our international clients coming in to select animals one by one. Now we're doing it by real time. We're doing it by video, things that we never thought we'd have to do. But we've got to also be careful because of animal disease around the world. It's things like foot and mouth disease from a lot of our clients come in to repopulate a country, African swine fever. So we're having to put people through the biosecurity system before they get here. And our point to bring people into the U.S. for most of them is 3 or 4 days in Las Vegas. Then we bring them in. So we have to be careful if people come in. The quarantine testing process, we do have a shortage of large animal veterinarians in a lot of places we work. And once we pull a tube of blood on an animal for an export shipment, I've got 30 days to get that animal out. So we are running into problems in places where we don't have enough veterinarians to do our testing and on our schedule. Transportation. Well, when we go to load a vessel, 1,500 or 2,000 head of cattle on a boat, I'm going to need 40 or 50 semis. So that has changed in the past year. I talked to one of our truckers yesterday. You know, he said, I just spent $990 to fill my truck up with fuel. He had another truck that let them go by the credit card limit and took him $1,400 to fill his truck. So these are things that are going to be a challenge to us as we try to move animals on a short basis to get them exported out of the country. The inspection by USDA at the ports, you know, we ship animals out of Wilmington, Delaware. We ship animals out of Olympia, Washington. Tomorrow night, we'll fly a shipment of bulls to Bangladesh out of Chicago. So we have points of embarkation where USDA does the inspection. But I will say, because of the downturn of USDA and maybe limited on personnel, we're getting to do more inspection at farms and ranches and go directly to the boat or directly to a plane. So it's under negotiation with USDA. Talk a little bit about air. Prior to COVID, we flew a shipment out of Chicago every 11 days somewhere in the world. We have a lot of competition now for planes that we use because of COVID. You have a choice. You can have $800,000 to charter a plane to fly COVID supplies, or take our $500,000, since we've been a normal budget, to fly pigs or cattle somewhere. So you know what they take. Amazon has the largest fleet of 747s. It's called Atlas Air. We use those. In a normal year, we would pay $600,000 for a plane like this to carry a shipment to Asia. Well, Amazon values their planes right now coming from Asia, loaded with all those goods that you supply, at $2.5 million per flight. So when they land in Chicago, it's quicker for them to flip that plane empty instead of taking my goods back to Asia when they go, which makes no sense economics to me. You think you'd want to have enough to pay your fuel, pay your help, pay your insurance, pay your depreciation. So that gives you some idea of the demand and the competition for planes. So a plane like this, we can load 180 head bred heifers to go somewhere. We can put 1,100 pigs on at 130 pounds. That gives you some idea of our capacity. Shipwise, we've sent a lot of cattle out of the U.S. by boat. Our smallest shipment's about 1,500 head. We've loaded as many as 3,000 bred heifers on some of our ships. So if you ever want to cruise, 28, 29 day, we've got a great exercise program, a lot of time to think. So, but to show you, this is how many boats are on the water right now. All of the green represent container ships. All of the red indicate oil tankers. We're not electric yet. So we're competing with a a lot of traffic out there. I'll skip on here to Africa and through the Suez Canal. So when you go through a year ago, when you go through the Suez Canal in the morning, you get there at 7 o'clock on the north side of the Mediterranean, and you're one of 27 ships to go through in single file. So you have to hire 2 pilots, Egyptian pilots, that are going to drive this boat through the Suez Canal. So when they get on there and get to arguing with a container ship that holds 17,000 containers, and it gets away from them, and they go through the Suez crossways and blocks it for 7 days, you see what kind of problem that causes. So we bring vessels in, we've got 48 hours to load them. I've got 48 hours to get 1,500 or 3,000 head of cattle on, all the feed, all the supplies that we use. And this is something that we're going to be doing more and more of from the U.S. So that gives you some idea of the traffic on the water right now. Develop your market. If you think you're interested in the export market, there's a lot of things you got to do. The promotion of getting your name out there, your supply, if you can supply enough animals for the market that you're targeting, the financing of the things that you're going to have to pay for in advance until you get paid, the government regulations that cover your health testing for export in the U.S., the importing into the buyer, the logistics, the insurance, the risk management, delivery to the customer, and again, your follow-up. This is no different than what the business you might do here in the U.S. It's the same concept that we do internationally of developing markets for animal genetics. I'm going to quote Clint Eastwood and Dirty Harry. You've got to know your limitations of what you can do and what you can't do. Our company, we provide a service to somebody that either A, doesn't have the expertise to do this, or they don't have the time. But you've got to ask yourself the question, what can I supply? What I can deliver? What I can finance? What we can guarantee? What you can service? What you can service that client that may be on the other side of the globe and give them the customer service that they need and deserve. The missionary work, this is what I call. A lot of times if I go to a new country, I would say that I usually planned it would take me 3 years before I would make a sale. Now, the help of electronic marketing, social media, Zoom calls, Skype, and what have you has shortened that window a lot. I've had farmers, ranchers, and breeders have traveled with me and gone to places that said, we've gone and we didn't get any orders. You have to have a lot of patience to get into this and to build a rapport and a relationship with the people that you're trying to do business with. Last week in Bangladesh, we had a seminar on genetics of introducing other breeds of cattle to them, management seminar. So you have to go and knock on the door and explain what you do, what you represent, and what your breed and product has to offer. Can't sell it if you're not there. Even though you can do this on Zoom and Skype, it's like being here. You've got to come, you've got to rub elbows and introduce your product and try to build rapport with not only breed associations they may have, livestock associations, but the government officials that are going to determine your success in that market. Like anything else, you've got to know your products, you got to know your customers, you got to know your suppliers. We have a lot of people that'll call and say, hey, I'm going to market my breed of animals in this market. Well, the environment may not be conducive because it may be too hot. It just may not work for you. So don't just throw a dart at the map. Research of where you may have the opportunity and the ability to market your genetics. Talk a little bit about some industry concerns here. Every day is kind of whack-a-mole. And we have a different product right now, especially. We got the shipment going to Bangladesh tomorrow night. We've canceled it 3 weekends in a row because of planes around the world. So when I told you we pull blood, we have 30 days to get it. Well, tomorrow night is day 41 on my blood test. I had in 30 years, I have never had to go and seek waivers for an export shipment. The last 3 I have done, I've had to seek waivers and extensions to health papers. So having to be in address problems that I didn't think we'd ever have to. But there's no guarantee that when we book a plane and we pay for it, that we're going to have it tomorrow night. So these are just some of the issues that we have in the export market. And I'm an optimist. I'm always a glass half full. But this COVID situation, the situation in Russia has created lots of issues for us. Our best friend, regardless of how good we say our genetics are, is still animal disease. We've been very lucky, foot and mouth disease here in the United States being free since 1929. We know what BSE did to us, the Christmas cow of 2003. Some of the states here, I'm sure you're from, still have problems with tuberculosis. If you're south of I-70 in the United States, you've got a blue tongue issue. We know what avian influenza is doing to the U.S. poultry industry right now. This morning I was watching CNN early. They were telling people to go ahead and buy your turkeys now for Thanksgiving. So it changes markets, it changes products. We know what H1N1 flu. We did 14 months of not being able to export pigs to China. PED in swine, we were out of that market for 9 months. African swine fever right now, we're repopulating the world with swine genetics because of animal disease. Vesicular stomatitis affects about 14 states in the United States, places that you can export to and places that you can't. We know what coronavirus has done to the U.S. and the world. What's next? I think right now we've got 25 cases of monkeypox in the United States as of this morning. So that'll be the next thing that we're going to have to deal with. The disease will influence our market. So when countries have a big disease problem and we get to repopulate them and it's a government program or World Bank program, all of a sudden they've got a lot of money. They start taking all the product in and they may leave our normal customers outside looking in. So this is how it affects us. What do you want to do for higher prices? And I know it's a touchy situation, but animal ID. As we move to traceability and access of markets and animal data and health records. If you want to export to the country of Colombia now, we have to furnish 2 years of health records for your farm or ranch. So this is what we're moving to. And if you're not using electronic tags yet, you might as well get it in your mindset. And same thing for your customers, because it's not if we break with foot and mouth disease, but when we break with foot and mouth disease, and we go to regions in the United States, you know, the Southwest may get to export, the Midwest may not get to, and it's going to come down to your animal identification. So there's a real competition between states and RFID tags. Animal welfare program. We have our shipments audited. We have people that come as third party and audit our shipments, just in case if we do have that wreck, because we used to put attendants on our airplanes. I would fly with a lot of our shipments. Now, because of COVID, I can't. So we load that shipment on the plane tomorrow night in Chicago. I have to wave at them goodbye. I don't have anybody on the plane to go with them. Horses are the only exception. So we have to satisfy third-party interest from our welfare program and give you 12 more reasons of why welfare programs will come into play. I'll give you a short story. We've sent about 10,000 head of cattle to Vietnam over the last 3 or 4 years, and we load from Olympia, Washington. Our first shipment that we have in 2015, I'm actually greeted by a group of protesters at the gate for our trucks. And I can usually see both sides of every story. I may not agree with you, but I can find a place to agree or understand where you're coming from. Well, we have a group, Mothers Against Children Drinking Milk. I have an organized group at the gate. So these are things that we are confronted by on the West Coast and the East Coast. And as long as people have one of these in their pockets, you know, it's not what we do, but it's how we do it. So this is the challenge that I give to you and the people that you work with, because somebody's always watching. So when we're at the airport loading animals on the plane, I could have 50 cell phones and pictures being taken at that time. So these are the things that we have to be watching all the time. Talk about what's next opportunity for the livestock export trade, and that's going to be the export of feeder cattle. It's coming. It's coming. The demand from Asia and the Mideast for protein. China continues to import more and more cattle from Australia. They were importing a lot from New Zealand until New Zealand had a ship accident last year, and they banned shipments by sea for 2 or 3 years. But it's left countries like Indonesia, Egypt, Israel, and places that buy feeder cattle really void of the numbers. So it's coming. You're going to see more opportunity for U.S. producers to be export large numbers of feeder cattle from the U.S. But some of the obstacles, when you go to export numbers of feeder cattle, they're going to have to be large shipments. We shipments north of 6,000, 7,000 head per vessel. Right now, we don't have the facilities on either coast because we truck all these animals to the coast, and then USDA goes through them one by one. Electronic ear tags. We scan them one at a time through the chute to make sure that they've been blood tested and on the health paper. We don't have facilities to handle that because, again, we've got 48 or maybe 72 hours to load that vessel, and then we start paying a $25,000 a day demurrage fee on that vessel while it sets. So time is money. So that's something that's going to be developed. Health requirements to make sure that the cattle here in the southern part of the United States will have the same opportunity. We cannot blood test feeder cattle for the same blood testing as we do breeding cattle, especially when we get into blue tongue and some of those things like that. It'll be interesting if some of the folks in the Mideast will put some of their ethnic specifications aside. You know, they only want to feed bulls. They will not feed a steer. So it's going to be interesting in time and in the future that if they're going to put that aside and realize that they're going to have to buy steer calves from the U.S. and not bulls like they buy from South America. Talk a little bit, everybody talks about China. China. We know it's the biggest 1 or 2 population in the world, but I can't tell you enough that don't underestimate the places I go that I sell to China without selling to China. So just the places that I go that are in red, I know that there are Chinese operations that they are working to feed their people. I'll just give you a couple of stories about Africa. We've sent about, the last 3 years, we've sent over 12,000 head of cattle to Africa. But you talk to any agricultural attaché at the embassy or charge d'affaires, and they'll tell you about the amount of money that the Chinese are spending within Africa. So they'll go into some place like the Congo. They'll pay the president of Congo $120 million, just throw out a figure. Half of that goes into a Swiss bank account. The other half, he'll stand up in front of the population of the country and say, I got this much money from the Chinese. Well, they've rented their farmland for 40 years. They get 80% of what's grown. So they're building all the roads and they're building the train tracks and everything to the ports to load those products. So I've seen it for myself, especially like in Pakistan, the Silk Road that everybody talks about. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes, but they bring all the workers to build those roads from China. So it is a great competition around this world of what the Chinese are doing to feed their people and looking that far ahead. So it makes me wonder of how the folks in Africa are going to feed themselves when they may be getting raped here for all the products that they raise, and they're going to be going to someplace in Asia. Just to show you, there's about 310 million Chinese have moved to the middle class, so they have the ability to buy the better products, and protein being that as well. So, but they've had their own problems with COVID. It's going to set them back, but it's still going to be the market, but it's how the products get there. I'm going to kind of wrap my part of this presentation up. The stars on this map represent one export shipment that we did. And I'm a firm believer in the export market of what it does. We're a small company, but our clients arrived on United Airlines. We rented rental cars. We stayed in hotels. We ate in restaurants. We used the local veterinarians to do the blood testing. We used the courier service, laboratories, the banks for our letters of credit, the insurance companies, the lumber that we use on the crates on the airplanes, or the feed that we buy to go on the ships. So one export dollar goes through the country and touches lots of hands. So getting back to Will Rogers, 3 types of people: the ones that learn by reading, the ones that learn by observation, and the ones that have to pee on the electric fence for themselves. So if you're in the export business and you think you have an interest in it, come on in, the water's fine.